Cranky was having a busy day at the docks. He worked as hard as he could, but still more cargo arrived. Lifting and loading, does it ever stop? He moaned as boxes piled up around him. The Fat Controller asked Kevin to help Cranky. Kevin was very excited. "I've always wanted to meet Cranky," he smiled. He couldn't wait to show everyone what a really useful crane he was. "Hello, Cranky," said Kevin when he arrived. "I'm here to lend a helping hook. What do you want me to do?" "I don't need any help," Cranky replied. "But surely there's something I can do," Kevin asked. "Stay out of my way," said Cranky. "I don't need any help, thank you very much." Kevin moved to a quiet corner of the docks and waited to be called. "Don't fret, matey. He's Cranky by name and cranky by nature," Salty said kindly. "You'll get used to him." Then, as Cranky unloaded pipes from a ship, some got loose. "Look out!" he yelled as they crashed down onto the docks. "I'll get them," Kevin called as he rushed to help. Kevin stacked up all the pipes as neatly as he could. "There you go, Cranky, all done," he said. But Cranky wasn't happy. "That was your fault," he said. "Watching me all the time. You're making me nervous. Go away and stop interfering." Later, when Cranky was carrying a crate of chickens, it cracked open and they escaped. "Don't worry, all under control," Kevin said, collecting up the chickens. "I told you to stay out of my way," Cranky replied. "All your whizzing around is making me dizzy." Then Kevin heard a crash as Cranky's hook knocked over some barrels, sending one rolling towards the sea. Kevin rushed to stop it. "I've got it," he said as he reached the barrel. But he couldn't stop and fell into the sea. "Help! Help!" called Kevin. "Crane overboard!" Salty shouted. Cranky quickly lowered his hook and carefully lifted Kevin out of the sea. "Well done, matey," smiled Salty. The Fat Controller was furious when he heard what had happened. "I thought I could trust you with this special job, Kevin," he said. "It wasn't his fault, sir, it was mine," Cranky told him. "Kevin was only trying to help. He's been a really useful crane." "It's good to see you getting along so well," said the Fat Controller. "Carry on." "What would you like me to do now?" Kevin asked Cranky. "Let's get the docks looking shipshape," Cranky replied. "OK, boss," Kevin said with a big smile. "You and me, Cranky, what a great team!" One day, Thomas and Edward had a special job. The mayor needed them to fetch Joby wood from Misty Island. "You'll need our help," Bash and Dash told Thomas. "The log loaders can be very naughty." "That's right," added Ferdinand. But Thomas had been to Misty Island before, and he thought he knew all about it. He didn't need their help. Thomas showed Edward around the island. Then he led the way to the Shake Shake Bridge. The logging station was just on the other side. As they crossed the bridge, it wibbled and wobbled under their wheels. Edward was scared. He stopped halfway across and wouldn't budge. "Don't worry, Edward," said Thomas. "I'll fetch the logs. Then we can take them back to Sodor straight away." The naughty log loader, old Wheezy, picked up some Joby logs, but instead of putting them onto Thomas's truck, he whirled and hurled them up into the air. The logs flew everywhere. Blistering boilers, cried Edward. The logs flew towards him, bounced off his cab and made the Shake Bridge shake even more. He was more scared than ever. As old Wheezy threw more logs around, Bash, Dash and Ferdinand puffed in. "It looks like you need our help now," said Bash and Dash. "That's right," said Ferdinand as usual. But Thomas still thought he didn't need help, so they rolled away again. Thomas chuffed over to Hee-Haw, the other log loader, but Hee-Haw was feeling too ill to work. Just then, James arrived with the Fat Controller. Hee-Haw wheezed and wheezed, and then coughed black smoke all over them. "Thomas," boomed the Fat Controller crossly, "logs are flying everywhere. Edward won't move and you are late with your delivery." Thomas felt terrible. "I'm sorry, sir. I thought I didn't need help, but I was wrong," he peeped. "Now I'll make things right." Thomas found Bash, Dash and Ferdinand. "I can't do this alone," he puffed. "I need your help." "Do as we say and we'll show you the way," chuffed Bash and Dash. "That's right," said Ferdinand. Together they steamed back to the logging station. First, the 3 locomotives pushed Edward across the Shake Bridge. Next, they oiled Hee-Haw's joints to make him feel better. Then they caught all the logs that old Wheezy threw in the air. Soon all the trucks were piled high with Joby wood. When the 5 engines delivered the wood, the Fat Controller said, "You are all really useful engines." "We make a great team," whistled Bash and Dash. Then all together, Ferdinand, Thomas and Edward peeped, "That's right!" Sodor Surprise Day was the day when friends surprised each other and made each other laugh. Thomas and Charlie were making each other giggle, but Gordon wasn't impressed. "Sodor Surprise Day is a silly day for silly engines," he huffed. The Fat Controller arrived to tell them about a party that night at Callan Castle. He asked Thomas to collect the bunting from Maithwaite Station and Gordon to collect the fireworks from Brendam Docks. Thomas wanted to surprise Gordon, so he hurried ahead to the docks. On the way, Thomas stopped to talk to Rosie, who was pulling coal cars. When Gordon came down the track, Thomas blew his whistle loudly. Peep! Rosie jumped in surprise, bumping into her cars. Soot flew everywhere. But Gordon wasn't surprised. He just huffed away. Thomas raced ahead of Gordon again and hid in a siding where Whiff was shunting garbage cars. When Gordon steamed past, Thomas puffed out. Boo! Whiff jumped in surprise, bashing into his cars. Garbage flew everywhere. But Gordon still wasn't surprised. He just huffed away. Thomas dashed to arrive at the docks before Gordon, and he hid behind some trucks. When Gordon arrived, Cranky started to lift a crate of fireworks for him. "I'll make Gordon laugh this time," Thomas giggled. He whooshed out from behind the trucks with a loud toot. Cranky was very surprised. He dropped the crate of fireworks with a crash and a bang. The crate broke open and the fireworks set themselves off, fizzing and whizzing everywhere. But Gordon still wasn't surprised. Gordon was cross. "Your silly tricks didn't surprise me or make me laugh," Gordon said sternly to Thomas. "I told you Sodor Surprise Day was silly. Now I don't like it at all." The Fat Controller arrived looking very stern indeed. "Thomas, there are no more fireworks for the party," he said. "And you haven't picked up the bunting. We will have to cancel the party." Thomas felt terrible. His silly pranks had ruined everything. Then Thomas spotted Harold in the sky, and an idea flew into his funnel. "Please don't cancel the party, sir. I know how I can get Sodor Surprise Day back on track," he said. "Very well then," said the Fat Controller. Gordon set off to pick up the bunting, and Thomas headed to the washdown to get clean for the party. Whiff and Rosie were already there. Once Thomas was clean, he puffed off to find Harold. "Harold can help me save the day," thought Thomas. That night, Thomas steamed up to the party. Harold flew above him, decorated with fairy lights. It was a marvellous sight. Gordon beamed. "I do like Sodor Surprise Day after all," he laughed. And Thomas was so surprised, he thought his boiler might burst. Everyone liked the new engine, Belle. She was a big blue engine with a big bell. Belle could fight fires with a whoosh of water. One day when Thomas puffed into Knapford Station, he saw Belle watching Toby trundling away. "Who's that, Thomas?" Belle asked. "He has a bell too. I'm sure we'd be good friends." Thomas told Belle all about Toby and where to find his hut. Belle wheeshed straight to Toby's hut. Belle was noisy and big. She made Toby feel very small. Toby told Belle that he liked to be quiet and listen to the birds singing. "I know how we can have much more fun than that," said Belle. "Follow me." Belle took Toby to the bottom of a hill. "Let's race to the top and then whoosh down," she cried. And off she puffed at full speed. "That was fun," laughed Belle, as she came to a stop. But Toby didn't answer, because Toby wasn't there. "I'm no good at racing," said Toby, when Belle found him. "Don't worry," Belle replied. She really wanted Toby to have fun and to be her friend. "I know what we'll do." And she raced off to a field full of pigs, with Toby following behind. "I like pigs," said Toby. "They make me happy." That made Belle happy too. Then she had an idea. "Pigs like mud, don't they?" she said, and she whooshed water from her spouts into the field. But Toby didn't answer, because Toby wasn't there. "I don't like whooshing water," said Toby, when Belle found him. "Don't worry," she replied. "Follow me." And she chuffed off to Maithwaite Station and rang her big loud bell for all the passengers to hear. Ding, 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 ding. We're the bells of Sodor, laughed Belle. Ring your bell for the passengers, Toby. But Toby didn't answer, because Toby wasn't there. Belle was worried. She wanted to find Toby. She wished away to look for him. Belle found Toby hiding in his shed. You didn't have any fun, said Belle sadly. And now you won't want to be my friend. They both sat quietly. Belle heard the birds singing. That's beautiful, she said. And Toby smiled. Then Toby had an idea. He took Belle back to the pigs. Quietly they watched the pigs, snorting and snuffling. Belle didn't make Toby feel small anymore. Then they went back to the station, and Toby jingled and jangled his bell for the passengers. Belle rang her big bell as quietly as she could. Belle is my friend, Toby told everyone. We're the bells of Sodor. And Belle smiled from buffer to buffer. The end. Flynn, the red fire engine, was at the Sodor Rescue Centre. Diesel pulled up beside him. Good morning, said Flynn. It isn't a good morning, moaned Diesel. I'm very busy. You're not busy. I am waiting to get busy, said Flynn. He always wanted to be really useful. Just then the rescue bell rang. Ring-a-ling! Stand by, fire engine Flynn, boomed Rocky. There's a blue engine. Flynn didn't wait to hear any more. He sounded his siren loudly. Wah! I'm ready to save the blue engine, he called, and with a honk of his horn, he was off in a flash. There's a blue engine in trouble, puffed Flynn as he raced down the track. When he saw Edward, the blue engine, he screeched to a stop. Edward, I've come to save you, he called. Fire engine Flynn to the rescue. Flynn fired his water cannons. Water whooshed all over Edward. And Edward's driver too. Flynn, what are you doing? Edward cried out. I'm not on fire. Oh, I'm sorry, Edward, Flynn said. He felt very silly. It must be another blue engine that's in trouble, said Flynn. I must hurry to find it. And Flynn rushed away. Gordon was at Marron Station. He was picking up the Fat Controller and Lady Hat. When Flynn saw Gordon, the blue engine, he screeched to a stop. Gordon, I've come to save you, he cried. Fire engine Flynn to the rescue. Flynn fired his water cannons. Water splashed all over Gordon and the Fat Controller. I'm not on fire, Flynn, Gordon grumbled. Flynn had tried to save the wrong engine again. He felt very silly indeed. I'm sorry, said Flynn. It must be another blue engine that's in trouble. I have to find it. And Flynn whizzed away. I wish I'd waited to hear which engine needed help, said Flynn sadly. Flynn found another blue engine at the diesel works. It was Thomas. His firebox was on fire. Flynn fired his water cannons. But no water came out. Flynn had used it all up. Sorry, Thomas, Flynn said sadly. I didn't wait to hear which blue engine I had to save, and now I can't save you. Then Flynn had a great idea. Diesels, he said. You will save Thomas. So the Diesel's drivers poured water on Thomas's flaming firebox, and with a fizz, the fire went out. Flynn trundled back to the rescue centre, where he was filled up with water. He waited to be busy once more. The rescue bell rang again. An engine needs help, boomed Rocky. And this time, Flynn waited to hear which engine it was. One day, the Fat Controller told the engines about some damaged track at Knapford Bend. All the engines listened carefully, except Paxton and Thomas, who were laughing at a duck. "May I remind you two in particular not to be silly," the Fat Controller told them. "I don't want any accidents." Later, Paxton arrived at the broken track. As he rolled over it, it rattled his radiator, making him laugh. That was fun, he grinned. And when Thomas appeared, Paxton got him to try it too. Woo-hoo! Thomas giggled as he bounced along. "Get a good run up and go really fast over it," Paxton suggested. So Thomas raced backwards around the corner and bashed into Toby, who was filling up at the water tower. Water splashed all over Thomas, which put out his firebox. "Oh no, the Fat Controller told me not to be silly. But I was, and now there's been an accident," Paxton said. He rolled quietly away to deliver his trucks to the shunting yard. When Toby arrived, Paxton heard him tell Stafford that Thomas had lost his puff. That sounded serious. Paxton decided to find Thomas's lost puff. He raced along looking all around, but he didn't really know what to look for. Then he saw a puff of steam and raced after it. But it was just Gordon pulling the express. Next, Paxton spotted a fluffy cloud in the sky. "That must be Thomas's missing puff," he said, as he hurried towards it. Paxton followed the cloud all the way to Ulstead Castle, where he met Stephen. "Hello, Paxton," said Stephen. "What are you doing here?" "Thomas lost his puff, and I thought that might be it," Paxton told him. "Up there? That's just a cloud," Stephen replied. Paxton felt rather silly. He sped away as fast as his wheels could carry him. Paxton realised he didn't know about steam engine's puff because he's a diesel engine. But he knew someone who did know about steam engines, Victor, who repaired them. At the steamworks, Paxton asked Victor if he had any spare puff for Thomas, which made Toby laugh. "Puff just means steam," Toby told Paxton. "When Thomas bumped into me, his firebox got wet, and steamies can't make puff when their fire goes out." Yet again, Paxton felt silly. But he cheered up when he realised that Thomas would be fine when his firebox dried out. As Paxton sped back to the water tower, he heard a peep, and Thomas puffed around the corner. "You're okay," Paxton said. "Yes, I found my puff," Thomas joked. "At least I learned something today," Paxton smiled. "That puff means steam?" asked Thomas. "Yes, but also that when the Fat Controller tells me not to be silly, I shouldn't be silly," smiled Paxton. And Thomas agreed. Thomas loved all the farms on Sodor, but his favourite of all was Farmer Trotter's pig farm. Thomas loved seeing the pigs playing in the mud and hearing them oink happily as he passed by. One day, Farmer Trotter had some exciting news. One of my pigs is going to have piglets today, he told Thomas. Could you fetch some soft straw for them from Farmer McColl's farm? Of course, Thomas replied. Thomas wheeshed along the track towards Farmer McColl's farm. As he whizzed along, Thomas couldn't stop thinking about the piglets. He wondered if there was anything else he could get for them. As Thomas puffed past the dairy, he saw Percy collecting the milk. "May I have some milk for Farmer Trotter's piglets?" Thomas asked. "Of course," Percy replied, and some milk was loaded into Thomas's truck. Thomas thanked Percy and he chuffed away. As Thomas puffed past the orchard, he saw James collecting apples. "May I have some apples for Farmer Trotter's piglets?" Thomas asked. "Of course," James replied, and some apples were loaded into Thomas's truck. Thomas thanked James and set off again. Then Thomas noticed some children collecting chestnuts in the woods. "May I have some chestnuts for Farmer Trotter's piglets?" Thomas asked. "Of course," the children replied, and they put some bags into Thomas's truck. Thomas thanked them and he set off again. Finally, Thomas rolled into Farmer McColl's yard. "You're late," the farmer said crossly, "and your truck is full, so there's no room for the piglet straw." Thomas hadn't thought about that. "I'll quickly take these things to Farmer Trotter, then I'll come straight back for the straw," Thomas told him. But when Thomas arrived at the pig farm, Farmer Trotter wasn't happy either. "Piglets must have soft straw," he said, "and they'll be born very soon." Thomas emptied his truck and rushed back for the straw. He wheeshed past Percy, James and the children. They all wanted to know about the piglets. "I'm sorry, I can't stop," Thomas peeped. "I must get some soft straw for the piglets." But when Thomas got back to Farmer Trotter's farm, there were no pigs or piglets in sight. Then Thomas saw Farmer Trotter standing by the barn. "You're just in time," he told Thomas. Farmer Trotter opened the barn door and Thomas saw the new piglets. The farmer scattered the straw on the ground and the piglets snuggled down to sleep. Thomas was delighted, and best of all, the farmer named one of the piglets Thomas. One morning, Thomas saw Percy and Hero at Knapford Station. "Good morning," he tooted loudly. "Good morning," Percy peeped. But Hero didn't toot a greeting. "You seem sad, Hero," Thomas said. "Maybe a little," Hero replied, as he steamed quietly out of the station. Thomas met Charlie at the docks. "Hero's feeling sad," he told Charlie. "Can you cheer him up with a riddle?" "Hero," Charlie called loudly, "what has 4 legs but never walks?" "I don't know, Charlie," Hero replied. "A table," laughed Charlie. But Hero didn't smile as he slowly puffed away. Thomas asked why Hero was feeling sad. "I miss my home," Hero replied. "I could puff along quietly there. I'm an older engine, so I like to puff along quietly." But Thomas didn't listen to Hero. He thought he knew how to cheer him up. Thomas took Hero to the hollow tree tunnel. Hero smiled when he heard the birds singing. But Thomas didn't listen to the birds. "This will make you happy," he said, as he raced along the tunnel. Hero was tired. "I just want to puff along quietly," he said. But Thomas had another idea. Thomas took Hero to Misty Island. Hero smiled when he saw the sea. But Thomas didn't look at it. "Come on," Thomas said, as he raced along the bumpy tracks. "I just want to puff along quietly," Hero said. But Thomas didn't listen. At the logging station, Hero smiled when he saw some joby logs. "There must be joby trees we can visit," he said. But Thomas wasn't listening. "I want this to stop," Hero said tiredly. "I'm sorry," Thomas replied. "I thought I could make you happy, but instead I've made you unhappy." Thomas tooted softly as he realized where he had gone wrong. "Hero, you told me what makes you happy, but I didn't listen. Would you puff along quietly with me now?" he asked gently. "Of course, Thomas." Hero smiled. "I would be happy to." First, Thomas took Hero to look at the sea. "This is beautiful," Hero said. "It's just like home." "Can I take you somewhere else to puff along quietly?" Thomas asked. "Of course, Thomas." Hero smiled. Then Thomas took Hero to the hollow tree tunnel. Hero smiled as birds landed on him. "Can I take you somewhere else to puff along quietly?" Thomas asked. "Of course you can," Hero said eagerly. Thomas took Hero to see where the joby trees grew. Hero gasped when he saw the magnificent trees. "This is wonderful! I am very happy," Hero told Thomas, and he smiled, his biggest smile of the day. "You are a very kind friend, Thomas," Hero told him. "Thank you for this special day." Thomas beamed from buffer to buffer. Then the two engines puffed slowly and happily together back to the engine sheds. A new safari park was opening and all the engines had important jobs to do. Percy and Edward's trucks were full of food for the animals. "I'm taking the tallest animal to the park," puffed Thomas excitedly. The other engines tried to guess what it could be. It was a giraffe. All the engines wheezed with wonder. Thomas couldn't wait to show the children the tallest animal on Sodor. "You must wait for the giraffe keeper," said Cranky. But Thomas was in too much of a rush and he puffed away. Thomas puffed happily along with the giraffe, but it wasn't long before they came to a low bridge. "Sit down, Mr. Giraffe," Thomas chuffed. But the giraffe didn't want to sit down, so they couldn't fit under the bridge. Thomas heard a whistle. It was Gordon. "Out of the way!" Gordon tooted crossly. "You must get the keeper. The giraffe will do what he tells him." "No, I can manage," puffed Thomas, and he reversed into a siding. Then Edward chuffed up with his trucks full of rosy red apples. The apples gave Thomas an idea. Perhaps the giraffe would get sleepy and sit down if he ate some apples. The giraffe liked Edward's apples. He ate and ate and ate, but he didn't sit down. Edward was upset that all his apples had been eaten. "You must go back and get the keeper, Thomas," Edward puffed crossly. Thomas was worried. The fat controller was waiting for him, and he still couldn't get under the bridge. Just then, Percy puffed along with a truck full of leaves. Thomas thought the giraffe might sit down if he ate some of the leaves. The giraffe loved the leaves. He munched and munched until there were none left. And then, finally, he sat down and closed his eyes. "He's asleep," peeped Thomas. "At last, we can go under the bridge to the safari park." Thomas clickety-clacked along the track and under the bridge all the way to the safari park. The Fat Controller was there, and he was cross. There were no apples and no leaves for the animals to eat, and the tallest animal was fast asleep. "I'm sorry, sir," wheezed Thomas. "I should have waited for the keeper." Thomas puffed his fastest to fetch the keeper and take him to the park, and then he chuffed away to get more apples and more leaves. When Thomas finally puffed back into the safari park, the giraffe was wide awake. He heard Thomas toot and stretched out his long neck to his new friend. "Welcome to Sodor, Mr. Giraffe," peeped Thomas happily. "It's a wonderful place to live."